And dear friends, as our gospel reading, I selected a passage from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 10, verses 38 through 42. As Jesus and the disciples continued on their way to Jerusalem, they came to a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. Her sister Mary sat at the Lord's feet, listening to what he taught. But Martha was distracted by the big dinner she was preparing. She came to Jesus and said, "Lord, doesn't it seem unfair to you that my sister just sits here while I do all the work? Tell her to come and help me." But the Lord said to her, "My dear Martha, you are worried and upset over all these details. There is only one thing worth being concerned about. Mary has discovered it, and it will not be taken away from her." It might sound strange to have this particular biblical passage, but dear friends, first, I need to give you a background. This is a revolutionary story in the Gospel of Luke. The Evangelist Luke is breaking. He is destroying deeply rooted stereotypes and prejudices of his time, and unfortunately, not only of his time. Don't we all know some bigots who love to parrot that women should stay in the kitchens? 2,000 years ago, Evangelist Luke was breaking all those gender stereotypes. This story clearly says that the place for women is in classrooms, in universities, on pulpits, presiding in courtrooms. And friends, how much safer, more prosperous, and frankly, happier we all would be if women, at least about two, were in the White House. And if you think I am now inappropriately introducing themes unacceptable for a memorial service, you really never knew our radical Ulla, and never really read or listened to the radical gospel. Because Jesus and his gospel were and remain revolutionary. And now it is time for us to follow Luke with that same revolutionary zeal and liberate this story from yet another bunch of misogyny and religious misconceptions that have accumulated around it. It is time to observe how fitting gospel reading it is, especially when we remember and celebrate the life of our dear friend Ulla. Because this story has been used to unjustly abuse Martha and to promote caricature of what it means to be religious. Martha was a real hero of a new understanding of religion. And I learned that from our dear friend, observing her in our church kitchen, feeding week after week, year after year, dozens and dozens, hundreds and thousands of hungry neighbors. It was her passion. No, it was her calling, making sure that all were fed and treated with dignity and love, just as Jesus would treat them. Ulla told me many times that she was not particularly religious. She was almost proud of it and kind of provoked me with that. And she might have meant it in her own way, or in that understanding of like a century ago almost. That old, stale paradigm, that old style religion. You would find it probably among those who are pushing forward that women should be in the kitchen. Yes, of course, but that is not the religion of Jesus. That is not religion of this church. That is serious, patriarchal, meretricious, fear and brimstone religion. And that needs to be thrown away. In the new paradigm, in that non-toxic, non-dogmatic, lively, joyful way of faith, I am certain it was not true for Ulla or for anyone else. Because there are different and living ways of being religious. There are the stale, churchy ways of being religious, but there are also other spiritual ways, practical ways, loving ways, caring ways. There are feeding multitudes ways of being religious. Our dear Ulla showed me and all of us at Rutgers and far beyond Rutgers what that meant. She showed us a new paradigm of being religious. Faith is not exhausted in pews for 1 hour on Sunday. No. Faith is also what we do on other days and at other times. For instance, on Thursdays afternoon and evenings, cooking and serving meals is a valid way of expressing deep devotion and faith. And sometimes it is more eloquent than the most beautiful prayers and chorales. In a way, I would say Ulla even bested Martha, definitely in one direction. I never really heard Ulla complaining that bitterly that she needed help. Yeah, she would occasionally mention it, but she did, you know. But that was her way of recruiting of new people, not making Jesus kind of feeling bad. She was active in fundraising, I know that. She came to me a number of times or to the office and bringing checks to support this important ministry of our church. And she was phenomenal in attracting, welcoming, training, and keeping volunteers from all different walks of life, all different religions, and non-religious people as well. We were all trained, and I count myself among those. We were all trained, we all served, and we all knew it was and it remains a ministry. We all felt it was deeply spiritual, even around the pots and spoons and other things. Yes, it was and it remains religious in a special way, that new paradigm way. Just like that biblical story, Ulla's ministry was breaking prejudices, cracking open new ways, tracing new paradigms of what it means to be religious in our world today, in New York City, in our time. Ulla was actively shaping and building here at Rutgers a new vision, a new way of being religious. in this church and outside of this church. Yes, then COVID came, and with it many changes. We had a strict policy that only people under a certain age could serve, to protect everyone in our congregation. And Ulla accepted that policy graciously, gave us her blessing. And from that moment, she joined regularly in our Zoom Bible class and in our theological discussions. For the last 5 years, Ulla stopped being Martha and became Mary. But she kept that Martha's attitude. She complained when we went on an intellectual tangent, we would hear about it. She would remind us, this is too intellectual. And John reminded me yesterday when I met him in a park that was her point. But that was not all of that. You can gather that here at Rutgers we are theologically and culturally progressive. But inevitably, we would occasionally slip into some form of not only intellectual but religious speak, some sort of churchy cliché. And Ulla would be right there, would gently challenge that, most often in the form of a question. There was no hiding behind religious platitudes, always striving for a clear, moral, loving, caring, truthful life. After all, she was right. She was not religious in that old, stale, churchy, guilt-driven way. She lived her life and finished it in the new paradigm of faith. And that faith definitely bridges over the gaps of what we can see with our eyes. I cannot see beyond, but I am almost certain Ulla would find her way of serving with dignity and love, especially those who even maybe in the heaven might be downtrodden, I don't know. But she would be there, fending for those people and feeding hungry souls and bodies. Amen.